Hello and welcome to another Happily Letter After tutorial. Today I'm going to show you how to do some bold, colorful, kind of graffiti style lettering in Procreate. And I have a square canvas that's 3000 pixels by 3000 pixels. You can do whatever size you want. I do square canvases so that it's easier to share on Instagram and other social media. Alright, so to get started, you can download the color pack that I have. I have 3 different sets of colors that you can use. The one I'm going to use today is this one right here, these 4 colors, but feel free to use whichever of these colors that you like the most. So to get started, I'm going to go into my brush pack, my lettering brush pack that I created, and I'm going to grab my pencil brush and we're going to go ahead and we're going to sketch out the letters first. So we're going to do the phrase be bold. So I'm going to start and I'm going to write, because bold, I want that to be the biggest, and let me actually grab a different color. In the disk view of Procreate, if you double click the bottom you can get pure black. It'll just be easier to see. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to write my first word all nice and big, and don't worry about how it looks. You don't want it to look perfect because it's going to be kind of graffiti style, so it's going to have some kind of fun look to it anyway. Alright, and then I want B to be more script-like, so I'm going to start. And then I'm going to add flourishes. Adding flourishes at the end is a better way to do it. That way if you mess up, you can always change it. So, and you can even do a different layer if you want and move it around. So let me show you. I'm going to do something like that maybe. Maybe a little higher, so I actually think I like the first way better, so let me, there, I kind of like that. And for my E, I think I'm going to do something like this. So I have it on a separate layer, and what you can do is if you want to move it around when you draw it, you can grab your arrow tool and just move it in the position that you want it to be, but I think it's fine the way it is. I'm going to merge these 2 layers together. I'm going to rename this as my sketch layer, and I'm going to click this N here and I'm going to bring it down to, I'm going to bring it kind of low. I have it at 26% opacity so that I can draw over it. So we're going to go ahead and add a new layer. And I'm going to stick with my black actually, and I created a new brush just for this class, and it's called the Extra Thick Script Brush. And if you're an email subscriber, you can grab it in the freebies library, or if you got my email, it's in there. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to trace over our letters that we already wrote, and you want to start off with light pressure for the thin areas and then heavy pressure for the thick. For your any flourishes that you do, you want those to be a little bit more thin because you don't want it to take away from the legibility of your actual letters. So I'm going to start off with the B on the top here, and again double tap, 2-finger tap to undo, or there's an undo arrow on the side. It's a very sensitive brush, so I created it like that so that we can do it nice and thick like this and get some really cool results. And I actually moved my E over a little bit, and I don't like how close it is to the B. So what I'm going to do, because I kind of like how my bee turned out, what I'm gonna do instead is I'm gonna just use the eraser tool, and I have it set on my large round monoline. I'm actually gonna up that to my extra large just to get most of it out, and then carefully erase. Usually I would just undo it and redraw, but I kind of like how the B turned out. But the E is a little too close to my B. So what I'm gonna do is I'm going to redraw it, and I'm gonna have it away from it more. And this part right here is a little too thin, so I'm gonna go over it again. There we go. All right, so that's pretty nice. So now I'm gonna do bold. And for this one, I don't want it to be script, so I'm going to make it just real thick, heavy pressure with your brush the whole time. Oh, I don't want it to touch the E. We can turn off our sketch layer. Now there's two ways we can add color to this. And before we do that, let me move this so it's a little bit more centered. If you want to center it perfectly, if you click the wrench icon and in Canvas, if you turn on your drawing guide, edit drawing guide, and if you up your grid size all the way so that you have 4 quadrants, click done. And then if you hit your arrow again, these little nodes that pop up, you can perfectly center it. So just move it along on your canvas until it's centered. These ones are good on, you can tap it here so that it moves it over slightly. All right, and then click again. All right, so now we have it centered. We can turn this drawing guide off. We don't need that anymore. It'll just distract us. So there's a couple different ways that you can color your letters in, and I'm going to show you how to do both ways. So the first way is actually one of my favorite ways to do it, and it's alpha lock. And we're going to go into one of the default brushes that Procreate has, and it's the airbrushing brush, and it's the first one, the soft brush. And my size is at 28% for that brush. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to grab this first color here, this yellow, and I'm going to brush over the B. See how we have the color that's only showing up on our letters and not the background? That's what you want. But there's another way we can do that. So we're going to undo that, and I'm going to, and actually I forgot to tell you, let's unalpha lock this, duplicate this layer, and rename this bottom layer here. We're going to rename this outline, and I'll get to that later, but for now let's go on this top layer here. The other way to do it, create a new layer above your lettering layer and start coloring in. Oops. All right, so you can start coloring in, and you see how it's going over your letters and you can't see it. If you click clipping mask, it'll clip it just to your letters. But I like to do alpha lock better, because see where we picked up our brush and put it down again, and see how we have these lines here? You don't want that. So it's an option you can use depending on the brush you're using and depending on the feel you want to get. But for this class, what we're going to do is we're going to do alpha lock. So put it on alpha lock and get your airbrush and brush each layer. So we're going to do the top yellow, go back in, grab this orange, and it'll start to fade on its own. And then grab the red, and last we're going to grab this pink. All right, and it fades on its own. If you want more of a fade, if you go to this S right, or not the S, I'm sorry, the magic wand here, and you click on Gaussian Blur. So I have the new Procreate version. This is version 5X. So if you don't have that downloaded, I recommend it. There's some really cool features on it, and I'm going to touch on some of that in another blog post. But this version now has where you can do the pencil with Gaussian blur or the layer. If you do just the pencil, it'll kind of be like a fade like this airbrush is already, which is cool. I have tried it, but I like to do layer. That's how it used to be anyway. And then you just drag your pencil along and it'll blur it. Like, see how that orange is taking up more of the yellow? So it just adds more of a blur to it if you want that. I don't, so I'm gonna click off that and I'm gonna undo it because I like the way it looks like this. I like the fade that comes with this, and I think it's a nice effect. Okay, so it's not complete yet. I mean, you can be done here if you want to, but we're gonna go back to this outline layer that we have, and I'm gonna go back to the magic wand, and we're gonna do the Gaussian blur, and we're gonna do it for the layer. Now, do not have this layer alpha lock. That's important. You don't want alpha lock on this one. And what we're gonna do is we are going to drag the blur, and you can see that black kind of coming out there. And I have it at about, let me see, make it a little bit bigger. Okay, I have about 18%. Let's try this and see how that goes. All right, so we're gonna go back to the disk view real quick. Double click on the black so that we have our black selected. And you can, oops, sorry. All right, now we want an alpha lock. Actually, no, let's, sorry. We're gonna select it instead. Okay, so now we're grabbing the brush, and we're gonna brush over, and you can keep, I have the airbrush still selected. You can keep the airbrush selected and see how it's getting darker with that black. That's what we want. We wanna make a nice thick outline. And it's not gonna happen right away. It's gonna take a few times. And so what I like to do after this is duplicate and just keep duplicating. And you can squeeze them all together. So now you have one layer. We're going to select it again, and we'll grab our brush again, and let's start coloring in. It's not a foolproof way, but it's a lot faster. I've seen people who outline it with their marker, and you can do it that way if you want to, but it's nice to know the tricks you can use in Procreate. All right, so I have it duplicated a few times and scrunched together. Now, because Procreate's a pixel-based program, you're gonna get these pixelated edges. So to clear that, grab your eraser, and I'm gonna grab the medium and just go in and erase all these parts that you don't want. And again, there are so many different ways that you can do things in Procreate. It's always a learning experience. Procreate keeps coming out with some awesome new features, and there are so many tips and tricks that other artists have done that have made Procreate a lot easier to use and a lot easier to understand. So it's a fun process to play around with the brushes and settings and get to know them, especially when they do these updates. And it's real easy. You just trace around to clean up your edges. Obviously, you might want to take your time with it more than I am. I'm just doing this to show you. I like to turn my canvas. Since I'm right-handed, I like to have it along the right edge here. It's easier for me to draw and trace. And one of my favorite features I'm going to show in a blog post is you can now have a reference photo on your screen. I have the iPad 10.5-inch screen. I don't have the large one, so for me doing dual screens is not an easy thing to do on a small one. So I like that new feature that they have. And okay, so I cut around the edges here, and I like the hole kind of in the middle of the B, but I don't like it here. So I'm actually gonna go back in and I'm gonna color that back in. I want it solid. And I'm gonna grab my brush again. I'm not gonna use the airbrush. So I'm gonna go back to my lettering set. If I can find it, I have a bunch of lettering brush sets here. Okay. So I'm just grabbing one of my monoline brushes and I'm gonna color this in because I actually decide I don't like that space. And let me see how it looks if I drag in color here. It's not bad. I think I'll keep it. All right, so that's one way to do it. It kind of looks like a sticker. I have another example that I've done where I have, this is actually my first one I did, and to add the highlights to it, let me show you how to do that because that's actually really fun too. So if you want to add some highlights, if you grab my lettering brush, my script brush that I have here, and we'll double click on the top of the disc view so it's pure white, and wherever you want your highlights to be. So I'm going to do it on the right side here. So light pressure to hard pressure. Oops, I have it on the wrong layer. All right, it's important to make layers and remember. So above your lettering layer, you want a highlight layer. And of course, undo if you want to make it perfect. And just go along each edge. Until you have all the spaces that you want filled with a highlight. And you don't have to do it everywhere. You can do just the top letter if you want, or you can do both the top and the bottom letters. This is my favorite part, I think, besides coloring in the letters, because that's also a lot of fun to play with the colors, but adding this final touch, it just adds so much to your lettering. It's a little bit. The little things sometimes can be big things, but see how that really changes it, and you can really see the difference if you turn off that layer and turn it back on again. It does add a lot of effects to your lettering, and I highly recommend playing with that. And you can even add in, if you wanted to, let me grab my medium brush here, and you can add shapes like some stars. And then fill them in. So you can add some really cool effects to your lettering and see these little things. I like this better than what we had originally for the space there. It just adds more to your piece. So have fun and make it your own. Do different styles of lettering. I'm not a graffiti artist, so this is my version of graffiti, and this is completely different for me to do this kind of style, but you know, experiment with different styles, use different fonts and trace them, and just try new things and have fun with it. Make the lettering your own, add some designs in it, add patterns, but the main thing is find your style and have fun. And I hope to see your work. You can share it with me on Instagram at blackrose613 and use the hashtag Wonder Wednesday Projects. I'd love to see what you come up with.